Hey guys, this is PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading Revived Publicly by Orphan Account. This is Chapter 5. Jason! Bruce called his name nearly 3 minutes after Jason had entered the hall. Fuck. He had hoped that he would have a few more minutes of adjusting to the gala atmosphere before he would be confronted with Bruce. I didn't know you were coming, Bruce said, once Jason had taken a deep breath and walked over. The witty and sharp remark was on his tongue automatically. Then Bruce's expression softened, and Jason reminded himself why he was here, as a favor to Dick, and to apologize, if given the chance. But I'm glad that you can make it. Bruce spoke, almost as an afterthought. No, as though he were correcting himself. Bruce smiled, awkwardly at that. This wasn't his usual Brucey Wayne persona. His hand twitched, and Jason remembered back when he'd gone to galas with Bruce willingly. And Bruce would keep a hand on his shoulder every time he became anxious. At the very least, he could find solace in the fact that Bruce was just as uncomfortable talking to him as he was himself. Well, I still owed Dick a favor, and he called it in, Jason answered, instantly wincing when his answer hit his ears. Of course, only Jason would fuck up an apology this badly. Bruce's reaction was quick, the corners of his mouth dropping down just slightly and for a second. Jason found himself worrying about how much sleep Bruce had been getting lately that he allowed that expression to slip through. Listen, about dinner last week, Jason began, gearing up his apology. He didn't quite know how to start. Luckily, Bruce picked up on the topic. I wanted to talk to you as well. Bruce sounded almost relieved that Jason mentioned it first. That had to be good, right? They stood in silence for several seconds before a waiter walked by and Jason snatched a glass of champagne from him. He really should have started drinking before this. Finally, Bruce cleared his throat and spoke. Great job taking down Stilton. Oh God, is that all Bruce wanted to say? Is that all he had to say for that evening? Because Jason was fine apologizing, but he deserved one as well. Bruce smiled at him, an almost proud look on his face. Jason wasn't sure whether this was directed at him or himself, but he could feel his opportunity slipping through his fingers. Thanks, but... he started, desperate to get out what he wanted to say. If he didn't say it now, he doubted he ever would. Bruce! He was cut off, as expected. The change in Bruce was direct, the dazzling smile, airy expression, and open posture as he hugged the interrupting woman. It was no sign of the serious conversation he'd been trying to have. Watching some woman flirt poorly with Bruce in front of him was definitely better. And this is Jason, the obnoxious lady exclaimed, her bright smile being directed to him. Fuck. It's been so long. And apparently he knew her. She went in for a hug as Jason tried to scrape his mind for some memory of where he knew her from. Had to be from before he died. He tried not to wrinkle his nose as he was doused in her perfume and pulled away quickly. Moira, always a pleasure, Bruce said happily as he grabbed 2 champagne glasses off a nearby table, handing one to her. Moira, Moira, Moira. The name sparked no memories. Who was she? Do you remember me? Moira asked him, and Jason raised his eyebrow in surprise. How well could he fake this? I remember the first gala we met. I think it was also in the museum, she continued. No sense in not trying. Of course, the one for the funding of... oh, what was it again? Jason asked, matching her energy and trying his best to pretend the thought eluded him. He raised his hand to his mouth as though he were thinking. The dinosaur exhibit? Jason corrected him. An even smile on his face told Jason that Bruce saw right through his bullshit. Exactly! Moira and Jason exclaimed at the same time, both falling into laughter afterwards, although Jason was pretty sure only he was overplaying it. It was almost funny how quickly Jason managed to don the persona of a perfect son when he tried. I do hope that you'll save a dance for me later, Moira said, a suggested twinkle in her eyes. And now she was flirting with him. Okay, great, that's weird. She had literally been flirting with Bruce seconds earlier. Wouldn't dream of anything otherwise, Jason promised, swallowing back the bile rising up in his throat. With another laugh, she walked away. Will I have to? Jason asked, quickly turning to Bruce with a raised eyebrow. This hadn't been disclosed as part of his favor he owed Dick. Then again, neither had him yelling at Bruce over dinner. If anyone talks to you, just say you need to check on your younger brother. Damien will be happy if he gets to escape outside for a bit. Bruce advised him with a chuckle, raising his glass to his lips. Good hack, Jason merely commented. His eyes wandered around the room, finally landing on Damien, who appeared to be trying his hardest to avoid attention from an older couple. Judging from his clenched fist behind his back, he needed a break just as badly as Jason did. For another minute or so, silence engulfed him and Bruce. Jason ran through every scenario he could think of, approaching the topic. None seemed to fit. You really don't remember the gala? Bruce finally asked, a weird expression in his eyes, as though he was expecting something from Jason. Jason couldn't quite blame him. He couldn't remember the last time they had been in the same room for this long, and hadn't fought with one another. Should I? Anything big happen? Jason asked, testing the waters carefully. This was uncharted territory for him and Bruce's relationship. Not much, Bruce answered him, but Jason could see the ghost of a smile on his lips. It was funny, almost, being able to speak to Bruce without him trying to hide every emotion he felt. Other than you knocking down one of the dinosaur models. Jason winced at that, the memories coming back to him all too quickly. He'd been young, 11 at most, running around the gala too quickly, and then he slipped, and slid another few feet for good measure on the waxed floors. How much do I owe you for that one? Jason asked, grimacing when he thought of how much money Bruce must have donated to fix his mistake. It was a fake model. Besides, I meant we could leave early. Bruce laughed, clapping a hand on Jason's back. For the first time in a long time, it was a comforting gesture. I think there was a robbery taking place at the gallery nearby that we went to take care of together. He smiled as he took another sip of champagne, no doubt reminiscing about old memories. Jason felt similar. For once it seemed easy between them, like the conflict of the last 5 years hadn't happened. I remember at one point, I was in the other room, and when I went to find you, Bruce broke off, starting to laugh before he'd even finished the story. Jason remembered when Bruce had done that when he was younger, how annoyed he had gotten every time. What? He asked, this time nothing but eager. 3 perps were tied up, and you... Bruce had to bite his laughter back again. You were standing on the other side of the room, criticizing a painting that was supposed to represent one Shakespeare play or another. Jason smiled again, a warm, honest smile that was a mirror on Bruce's face as they both basked in the strange nostalgia. Well, yeah. It was a shit painting and did the story no justice. Jason countered as he remembered exactly what Bruce had been talking about. This was nice. Almost too nice. Jason hadn't realized how much he truly missed his dad. For a second, Jason almost deluded himself enough to think his father would say he missed his son. Working with you. Bruce ended, apparently as emotionally constipated as ever. Jason bit his cheek, trying his best to hide how much that stung. But what else could he expect from Bruce? The man had always been more Batman than his father. There was a reason his memorial named him a soldier, not a son. You used to be so happy, Bruce continued. The happy expression on his face replaced with sadness. Jason really couldn't take a lecture on his change in morality right now. Yeah, well, that was a long time ago. Jason responded, emptying the rest of his glass before he walked off. He didn't stay to see Bruce's reaction. He didn't think he could bear it. Maybe he was stupid to think Bruce would ever see him as anything other than a living memory of who he had been. Jason! Someone called his name and Jason bit back an insult. I'm sorry. I really should be checking up on my brother. I'll find you later. Jason instead gave an empty promise, remembering Bruce's advice last minute. He stepped outside, letting the cold wind hit him and blinking back tears. This was not the time to start crying. He instead lit a cigarette and found the nearby bench to sit on. It was exactly 43 seconds before he was interrupted. Yes, Jason had counted. Todd. Jason didn't grant Damien the pleasure of looking at him. Demon spawn? Silence. He took another drag of his cigarette, relishing in the way the nicotine calmed his nerves. If you were going to use me as an excuse, you could at the very least take me with you, Damien said. Other than that, he just stood there. God, this kid was weird. Didn't realize you needed someone's permission to leave, Jason said, instead of every other mean thing he could. The conversation with Bruce had been draining enough. He didn't need to argue with his brother as well. Damien only clicked his tongue in response, and Jason counted that as a win. Father wants me to keep up a good image for the media, Damien explained, and Jason looked up at him. Damien was staring back at him. Funny, Jason responded in a dry tone. B gave me the same lecture. He brought his cigarette back to his mouth. Damien followed the movement closely with his eyes, his expression hiding nothing. Are you aware that smoking is terrible for? You got something you want to say, or are you just going to sit here and criticize? Jason asked, finally having enough of Damien's offstandish way. His brother froze for a second. I'm exceedingly good at multitasking, he finally answered. You're exceedingly humble, too, Jason said, rolling his eyes as he put the cigarette out on the bench. I noticed you and Father finally spoke. Ah, great. Dissecting that conversation was just what he had wanted to do. And here, he thought the demon spawn couldn't possibly worsen his mood. And? Jason asked, nonetheless. If Damien wanted to open that jar, then they'd open it. I would like to know if you have apologized for the scene you caused at dinner, Damien said, so casually that Jason almost gave himself whiplash when he turned to face him. How about he apologizes for being a shit dad instead? Jason snapped, before he had half a mind to think of his words and their implications. He was sure he'd regret this tomorrow. Damien clicked his tongue once more. I was not aware that you still wanted a father, Damien finally said. It was a good thing Jason put out his cigarette when he had, because, if not, he was sure he would be burning his hand with it right now. Why did that upset him so much? That he still wanted Bruce to be his dad despite their personal differences? It was something he hadn't realized until tonight. How do you even know about dinner? He settled for saying. Father had been brooding around the mansion more than usual. Well, that made two of them. Well, I haven't been having the time of my life either, so thanks for asking. Jason sneered, already taking another cigarette out. There were a few seconds of silence, only broken by the sound of Jason's lighter and Damien's thinking. I don't understand how you two plan to resolve all your issues, if you spend all your time either avoiding or screaming at each other, he finally said, making Jason still. It was surprisingly insightful to be coming from a 5-year-old, and, unsurprisingly, the last thing he wanted to hear today. You have 5 more minutes until the guest becomes suspicious. After 10, there'll be a gossip column. There was another click of Damien's tongue, and then Jason was alone again. Alright guys, and that is the end of Chapter 5 of Revived Publicly by Orphan Account. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next chapter.